Welcome to the short introduction of an incredible and fascinating period of our history. As seen on the slide, the Renaissance is a time period commonly classified between the 1400 and the 1600, even though it is more accurate to date its beginning to the middle of the 1300s. The Renaissance followed the Middle Ages and is characterized by how the people saw the centuries leading up to the Renaissance as the Dark Ages, and a barbarian time in human history. The late Middle Ages was a brutal time in Europe, with everything from different plagues and wars taking its toll. On top of that, the Church wielded its power over everyday life for the common man. Renaissance means rebirth, and comes from the revival of ancient philosophy, arts and culture. There was still a lot of religious art, especially Virgin Mary, but within philosophy, mankind had taken the center. Florence, Italy, is considered the birthplace of the Renaissance. Rich and powerful through its production of woolen clothes and trade connections around the entire Mediterranean. There were several rich and powerful families throughout the Renaissance. The Medici family produced no less than 4 popes through strategic power play. The Sforza and the Borgia also leave deep traces in the history books. Several rich families associated with artists, philosophers and politicians, which was a major change from the late Middle Ages, where it was mostly the Church that was behind art orders, and thereby controlled unwanted thoughts and criticism. The Renaissance art is characterized by how the human body is idealized and becomes a proof of how skilled an artist you are. The more realistically rendered, the better. The artist makes revolutionary use of perspective in their work. Several of the artists in the Renaissance were considered universal geniuses, which means that they were scholars and had an extraordinary amount of knowledge and skills in several subjects. They could, for example, be painters, sculptors, inventors, architects, engineers, and study the anatomy of the body at the same time. The artists named on the pictures are some of the most prominent universal geniuses from the Renaissance. They would in the 1980 even prove themselves adept as martial artists when they chose a career path as ninjas disguised as turtles. The architects in the Renaissance looked at the ancient ways of building and improved upon them. In this way, beautiful buildings were constructed that followed strict geometric principles to create buildings that are comfortable to look at thanks to their harmonious proportions. And above all, the golden ratio was important. And what is the golden ratio? I'll leave that one for you to find out. During the Renaissance, several important discoveries were made, and one of them was the book printing. Previously, books were written by hand by, for example, monks, and then they were written in Latin. This, of course, took a long time to produce and was expensive and incomprehensible to most people. With the printing house, books were produced more quickly and became cheaper to buy. The art of printing had an important role in how new thoughts and ideas spread quickly. Astronomy and the space was something a lot of Renaissance scientists wanted to learn about. While it previously was believed that the Earth was the center of the universe and that everything revolved around the Earth, new thoughts was emerging, much to the Church's dismay. Copernicus discovered that the Sun is the center of our universe. This was contrary to the teachings of the Church, so he did not dare to say this until just before he died. Bruno agreed with Copernicus and claimed that the universe was infinite. Indirectly, he was claiming that the Earth was a tiny part of a giant universe. This was interpreted by the Church as a threat to their power and a mockery of God. In the year 1600, Bruno was burned at the stake for his opinions. Galileo Galilei supported the heliocentric worldview, which means that the sun is at the center. Galileo was forced by the church to publicly state that he was wrong and to withdraw his opinions. Martin Luther was a German priest who, after a pilgrimage to Rome, then the cradle of Catholicism, disagreed with how the church used its power. He especially criticized the practice of being able to buy indulgences. A letter of indulgence is that one can buy a letter from a priest to be forgiven for his sins. Martin Luther meant that only God could give forgiveness, and this was not something the church should use to enrich themselves by. Martin Luther played a major part in the establishment of the Protestant church. To summarize the main features of the Renaissance, we can state the following. The Renaissance looked to ancient times for inspiration. Mankind had value in himself and was capable of incredible feats. New literature, political and philosophical themes became popular, in contrast to the religious focus of the Middle Ages. Art, in the form of paintings, sculptures, music, finds new forms of expressions, and rich families are often the ones who order. The architecture follows mathematical formulas and symbols to create comfortable and beautiful buildings. It also enables the large dome of St. Mary's Church in Florence, which seemed impossible a few years earlier. I am ending this presentation with one of history's greatest masterpieces, painted by Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel. I hope this presentation has given you some thoughts on what you want to learn more about and, not least, want to explore the exciting time period that is the Renaissance. Thank you so much for your patience.